I will go through some of the archives that I have made from images that I have found and perhaps be able to express why they so concern me. Here's an example of an archive that I don't feel has been properly examined. It's a Lee Harvey Oswald counterfeit Selective Service. I don't know if counterfeit is the right word. It was issued to him by the Selective Service, but it has an unusual name for him. Alec James Hidell, with the ID dark, leaving HELL. ID is darkened for signifier that this is an ID, and that stands for identification. AH is like Adolf Hitler. James is my middle name. They planted the Texas school book on me. Here's a film by Orson Welles. It says the cell door opened, that's all there is to it. They let him escape right before my eyes, in my view. It's an era of films where I found a number of eerie things like Rather Us with the US over the swastika. It's like Lazarus. I kept looking for these things. You can see the similarity between the two graphics. So I slowed down that movie to look at it frame by frame. This goes by too fast to see, but I didn't Photoshop it. It's on the original reel. It has the U.S. over the swastika with a bust of Hitler and there next to Reagan. There's Errol Flynn, who lived in Laurel Canyon where Houdini lived and was rumored to be meeting with Adolf Hitler. So you have Hitler, a man who was meeting him, and Reagan with Rather Us in the U.S. over the swastika. Another thing that happens in that movie, Reagan says, Goebbels train, that's almost good enough for me. That understates only Hitler is good enough for Reagan. There's no question that this kind of semiotic illusion was going on in these movies. The Odessa file opens with John Voight hearing in a rainy day in Germany or something of Kennedy's death over the radio. It's being announced. And when he gets home, he tells his girlfriend or wife, you know what you can get for the photograph? It's quite an ugly reminder of what kind of people they are. Quite an ugly reminder. And that's not the only thing that happens in that opening frame scene. He's driving, Oswald appears on the screen. It morphs into Ronald. Oswald Ronald. There's a terrifying and difficult to accept consistency in these images. Here he goes in one of his other movies. Well, I was out there in front for a while. I was out there in front for a while. And then bang, I was flat on my can. Now you're going to remember this day for an awfully long time. The Gerster has a word for that technique. It's called fluxus. Notice Errol Flynn has his, if you find this movie with Errol Flynn, that's the guy in the middle. He has a coat draped over his hand so you can see what he's holding. Similarly, Dealey Plaza has that function. And in this movie, guy says, give me a table. He says, we don't have any. He says, well, if the President of the United States was going to be here, would you be able to find a table for him? He says, well, of course. The waiter says, well, of course. Well, he says, well, I guarantee you he won't be here. So make way for the Rolling Stones. Now, in the Japanese films, I find a story that's also a function. It's not just JFK's murder over Hiroshima that's a function. That's just one element. The escape of Hitler is another element. Two Virgins Pussy Ball, or Moral Ball, we should say, was clogged to the AIDS attack. And text schoolbook was sent. Now, you might think, oh, I'm just reading into those number twos, but these are different movies, not the same apartment. And a man peeks out from here. You see, Japanese postal services have a slightly different social function in Japan. But the postal union was certainly following this. Certainly following this. When they send me the Texas school book. I live near a girl named Jennifer Rubin. Spitting image of Neva Pink, Jennifer Rubin. And Two Virgins was the name of a cosmic charter by the assassins they sent me the letters from Israel, and they used a C and a Star of David. I testified that they kidnapped, tortured, and gassed me. They gassed me and sent me letters from Israel. That was the first Holocaust experiment as a child. Special education, Pittsburgh Public Schools. To this hour being defended by the NAACP as a provincial norm. Because after all, they got the version of the ice. And then they lured me to Mount Desert Island for a mouse trap to make sure I understood marital honor code of Colin Powell. They implanted a neuroplasm. There you could see the peep. I've been looking at their symbols to try to understand what they're driving at. There's a story that Kennedy's motorcade was rerouted, which is why it made the wiggly line. When it got to Dealey Main Street, it had to turn and go into Dealey Plaza. Here you can see a map of the wiggle line. It came down this way and then wiggle lined into Dealey Plaza. And in one of their movies, one of the Axis Confederate movies of Japan, it says 45, which is the year Hitler was supposedly defeated. Champ 63. 45, Champ 63, which is the year he proved who's all big. And they laid out a red carpet for the Rolling Stones. Yep, and on the cover of Sergeant Pepper's. He says to get them onto this street. To get them onto this street. In Japanese film made right at the same time called Cruel Gun's Story. Cruel Gun's Story. Here's a picture of me under Hitler nuns. What would be better symbol for the AIDS attack than Hitler nuns? Hitler went to the convent and said, we don't take to these lust decadence. Notice how her hands are placed over her ears as though an atomic blast. Notice how they get even on Charlie Chaplin. 3 different comedian films use the Charlie Chaplin Great Dictator semiotic. And Oswald's other ID is dated for the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. They let him escape, right in my view, to Adolf, my son. And they did this teaming up with Israel. They teamed up with Israel. Here's the image I told you about, in case you didn't believe me. If the president of the United States came here where I wanted to sit at a table, would you have a place for him? He says, well, I guarantee he will not be here. And little boy from the Navy was forced through torture by Bush and Obama to apologize at the Dakota to the Tojo Ronin hag Yoko Ono. The doorman of the Dakota wrote this. It was the most immiserating journey I have ever taken, but if you doubt that they used compulsion on me, try to explain what Ichiro was up to with regard to me. Torture me until I now have Parkinson's. They were getting revenge. They were turning it around for 911. And you can see what a scream they think it is. And this was Reagan's bedfellows. There's John Wayne with Oswald in the Navy mess hall. And in case you doubt that Lennon pulled a Houdini, look at the familiar to Gail Burstyn in an Ayn Rand film. Ayn Rand was a hotshot capitalist who used to talk about making prime movers, she called them, super richos of the oligarchy, disappear into thin air and nobody knows where they went. You only live twice made real. And would be like starting over. Notice how the Lennon record says just like double. They use double, just like. Looks just like Gail Burstyn. Just like his record. When you apology, it would be just like starting over. And here's Ichiro with my name on his collar. I'm gonna get collared if I don't do it. And they have Hillary Clinton saying, I'm sorry. She had all the cashiers going, I'm sorry, Fluxus mental abuse. Penis Gabriel is a vicious ESP conveyance artist. And these were the people who made Birth of a Nation with the foaming Negro, remember? And they're the people who put the Jew in the anti-Semitic clutching a camel bird. It's like the eternal Jew. Joseph Goebbels made that. This is what they're still up to to come. It's UW's specialty. This is why they chemically castrated me. They made me out to be something. Robert Fripp said, virginity proves rape. A girl I left alone after dating for a year. Left her a virgin. Dated her for a year. We were close too, real intimate. She would be slut shaming to describe her behavior towards me. She was still a virgin. He said it was proof of rape. Even she denied it. Who the hell does he think he is? And this is their proof. This claim, when he actually pulled a Houdini, when he actually was behind the script, they documented. I said my soul conscious was retching out from inside of me. They documented the nerve agent, big disc thinger, Gail Carolyn Burston. They documented. And then they started haunting me in paper with this stuff. The liar, the liar. You give rock a bad name. You give rock a bad name. Gaslighting techniques from Penis Gabriel. And she wrote, they tell me I am wrong, the scriptwriter. Michelangelo became possessed. Socrates became possessed, and blondes always have fun. And they ignored the evidence. The University of Pittsburgh made a mockery of me, drove me into homelessness, and said, Susie Cream Teas, what's got into you? Why don't you kill yourself during a rough patch, they were saying, things like that. It sound mental health. Call me a liar. When this is who they were actually working with. Aleister Crowley and Ouspensky, Nazi nutters, on a victory and revenge plan, a virginity and rape planning concept. Lawyers for their law firm were behind the whole thing. And there's a telltale clip on that. She has a little exquisite performance, and then she goes, that's one. They're keeping a menu. Donald Trump's gang. Here, look. See, one has a hymen and one doesn't. That's a pussy ball image from the telltale clip. She comes up with a ring of mesmer and spreads her legs as she jumps into the pool. It's plain as day what they were pulling. And then the lawyers come up with this. Oh, maybe you don't realize that women cry too. They came into the schools. The Neva Corporation with the Israelis came into the schools. Kidnapped me. They might as well have stuffed me in a bag. I was crying, biting my fingernails, bloody in the office, and then disappeared for a month. And nobody even investigated. And it was two virgins pussy ball. Nobody investigated. The University of Pittsburgh to this day sends me mockery. Jimmy, what's this about? Jimmy. See the crimson island of Japan that comes up out of her crotch? See? They're using semiotic symbolism. Ron Priest with a needle at the end of Superfly. And then they say, have fun with your double fantasy. Marquis the Twain. That's also edition of Life magazine with lookalikes of 1 million LBJs. Because the real problem was hang. Just hang. University of Pittsburgh makes a mockery of me while playing two virgins pussy ball after publicly assassinating my dad. Publicly assassinating him over a ridiculous pit football. This was a pit game from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The Federal Emergency Management Agency authored a game called Two Virgins Pussy Ball that they clocked to the AIDS attack. Jennifer Rubin arranged for me to be seduced by a girl named Diva, whose sister name was Neva Mancine, like Manson Cinema. Then they send me the Holocaust letters from Israel. There was a girl in a Shinto shrine outfit next to Kennedy when he was killed. Broken science. Notice how the For Whom the Bell Tolls, how it goes to the choke color line. Notice how the leader of the victims representing Lenin was behind the anthrax. Notice how a look-alike of Gail Burston, with a man getting ready to drop something into a still pull, appears on the cover of one of Lennon's best friends records in 1979, then appears in Licky Chop's headquarters, Seattle Center. Licky Chop's headquarters, yep, that's what. And they, on the script says only two people would know. Only two people would know about the sex bomb in Queerball's closet. They call it unfinished business, unfinished music, because they have at the Tacoma Dome a disappearing magic mountain. Remember the story how we could have demonstrated on the sacred mountain of Japan? We have a mountain that disappears, comes because depending on the atmosphere, you can't see it or you can't. Now you see it, now you don't. Like that Veronica Lake from this gun for her. And where did they build the Tacoma Dome? You know, there's a Hiroshima Dome, don't you? These crafties have spinner beanie people in the Green Party in Seattle making us, well, against their own children. That's how smart UW is. Oh, UW is smart. They're smart people. They licky chops their way into security in Columbia University with their sacred spinner beanies. Woo!